Hello, everyone. It's great to have your company for another edition of VLGA Connect, sponsored by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. Each week at this time, we bring together sector leaders to talk about issues of importance and relevance across the state and bring you some of the latest news as well. And I'll get to the news headlines in just a moment. But let's tell you who's joining us today. I'm looking forward to chatting with Mark Stoermer, the CEO of Mornington Peninsula Shire Council, on how he's settling into the role and what his priorities are, including a restructure that's been announced and the pending release of a Board of Inquiry report into the McCrae landslip with potential sector-wide implications. And later, the Mayor of Moyne Shire Council, Councillor Karen Foster, joins me to talk about the council's refreshed commitment to Great Ocean Road tourism, advocacy for better community outcomes from renewable energy, and a controversial decision to remove the prayer from the council's meeting agendas. That's all coming up. But first, here's some of the latest news in Connect Headlines. Victoria's anti-corruption watchdog has charged 2 people following a 7-year investigation into alleged corruption at Casey City Council. A former Casey councillor has been charged with 5 offences, including receiving secret commissions and misconduct in public office, while a property development consultant has also been charged with giving secret commissions. While IBAC didn't name the individuals, media outlets, including The Age and the Herald Sun, say they understand Sam Aziz and John Woodman to be those who've been charged. Both accused are expected to appear in Melbourne Magistrates Court on the 25th of September. The City of Greater Geelong has launched a new campaign aimed at protecting frontline workers from abuse and aggression. The initiative comes after more than 250 reports of occupational violence were lodged by city employees in the past year alone. The campaign aims to remind residents that council workers are there to help the community, not to be subjected to harmful behaviour. Strathbogie Shire Council is taking a strong stance on new electricity reforms in Victoria as rural landholders express growing concern about their rights and the future of agricultural land under the new legislation. Mayor Claire Hewitt-Kennedy said the reforms represent another blow to regional communities already grappling with drought, the Emergency Services Fund levy, unreliable power and growing inequities. Bass Coast Shire Council is pushing back against a proposed 160% increase in its contribution to beach lifeguard funding from $98,000 to over $260,000. It says the increase would strain its budget and comes after limited consultation and outside the normal budget cycle. Greater Shepparton City Council has called for an urgent review of a newly proposed renewable energy zone between Shepparton East and Benalla. The zone was unexpectedly included in the 2025 Victorian Transmission Plan, announced recently. Baw Baw Shire Mayor, Councillor Danny Goss, has led a historic repatriation of 37 cultural artefacts to the Lardle people of Mornington Island. The council said the trip to far north Queensland marks a significant step towards reconciliation. And Rob Guthrie has been returned as a councillor for the South Ward of Macedon Ranges Shire Council after the VEC conducted a countback of votes from the October 2024 general election. The vacancy on the council occurred after the passing of Councillor Christine Walker. And that's the latest Connect News headlines. My first guest on VLGA Connect this week is the reasonably newly installed CEO down at Mornington Peninsula Shire Council. Mark Stoermer is with me. Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Great to catch up with you. It's been a while. Our paths first crossed when you were the CEO at Nillumbik Shire Council. There's a few years under the bridge since then, and you've been around the sector. How's the journey been for you? You've been interstate and you've been back in Victoria for a while.
It's been great. It's really kind of interesting to go to different types of councils and see issues that are similar, but then issues that are unique to each of the councils as well. But there are certainly themes that run across all councils: financial sustainability, asset maintenance, those sorts of things. And then there are issues that are specific to each council. So it's been really interesting to get a real wide variety of different types of councils.
Yeah, what do you think of when you think back on your time at Douglas Shire in Queensland in terms of the differences of the CEO role in those different communities?
I think one of the differences is that at least at the Douglas Shire, the mayor is elected directly. So the mayor is in place for 4 years. So you don't sort of have this change every year of mayor. So that's probably one change. And that places in some ways more emphasis on the mayor. And we tend to, in this sector, talk about, councilors shouldn't be involved in operational, et cetera. That's a whole topic we could spend days
Yeah.
on, but
Yeah.
I think that's probably a little bit of a difference, but the similarities are much stronger. So particularly between a place like Douglas, which is Port Douglas, which has a huge tourism population, and the Mornington Peninsula, which also has a huge tourist population, and that constant tension between residents and tourists, and the ability to fund assets and have enough infrastructure for a tourist population.
Mm.
All of those issues are very similar between the two places. And then on top of that, some of the environmental overlays and the importance of, particularly in Mornington, the Green Wedge, but up in the Douglas Shire, some of those national rainforests and things like that. So a lot
Mm.
of similarities actually between that. It's just Mornington Peninsula has a much bigger population.
Yeah, interesting. And I think you were gone from Douglas before Tropical Cyclone Jasper hit, but have you been
Yeah.
back up there since that occurred? Because that had a big impact, didn't it?
It had a huge impact, and I haven't been up there. I just haven't had time,
Mm.
but that did have a huge impact. One of the things that I would say is that Queensland has always had a really good emergency response system because cyclones are a regular thing. The preparation that goes into that is significant, but my understanding is that was primarily a rain event, and the flooding was significant. And we could probably talk about climate change and things like that a little bit later, but that preparation for those events, there's a very formal structure in place in Queensland where all agencies come together throughout the year in preparation for the cyclone season.
Yeah, and that was sort of where I was leading into to sort of learnings, observations that you can bring from that experience down here,
Yeah.
because we are starting to see more and more of these extreme weather events, aren't we?
Absolutely. So the way the agencies coordinated, really using the council and the mayor as spokespeople, but bringing the SES, all of the emergency services together, the hospitals, all of those different social services and people services together into a room before cyclone season to prepare, to make sure that everyone knew what the process was. And then when a cyclone potentially was on its way, there were different stages, but there was a very formalized process at a local, a regional, and a state level. And I do think that we could take some learnings from that. I
Yeah.
think we're headed in that direction. And certainly at Mornington, I've seen significant improvements from what I would have seen 10 years ago in the sector. But that ability to bring all those agencies together, prepare, have a coordinated plan is really important.
Yeah. So after you left Douglas, you came back to Victoria. You had a couple of director roles at Wyndham and Brimbank. Was it always part of the plan to try and get back to a CEO level role in Victoria?
No, it actually wasn't. And in fact, if I'm really honest, after Douglas, I thought, no more CEO roles. And I probably just needed a bit of a break. And anyone who's been a CEO in this sector knows that it can be pretty exhausting. But it wasn't part of the plan, and I wasn't even actively looking. It actually just I got a phone call on this particular role. I loved working for Fiona Blair at Brimbank. She's an amazing leader. And I felt really terrible leaving there, but this was a great opportunity, and there were similarities between Douglas, Nillumbik, and here, and I felt that I could therefore contribute here.
It's a good thing about the sector, though. Generally, people don't hold that against you. People like to see that experience being shared and
Yeah,
broadened across other councils, don't they?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, Mark, let's talk about your current role then. You're 4.5 months in. Mornington Peninsula has been in the news a bit of late, and I want to touch on a couple of the reasons for that. But as you came in, what were your priorities from the outset, and how you're travelling in regards to?
Well, I think the priorities in terms of, when you go through the interview process, you get a pretty clear sense of what the councillors are looking for and what the council's looking for. And we did need to do an organizational restructure. Our employee expenses had increased fairly dramatically, pretty quickly over a period of time. We do have financial sustainability issues like all councils, and we do have some issues around how do we take a fairly inwardly focused organization and really open ourselves up to the community, working with the community and really developing that customer service focus. So it was quite clear what that task was going to be in terms of the organization. So I've been working on that from day one. Once you get into the job, you then realize what some of the broader community priorities are and what some of those issues are. And I've been working on some of those, and I'm happy to go through what I think some of our priorities are as a community as well. But certainly my task from the get-go was to get focused on the financial sustainability, and that meant doing a reorganization. I've mostly focused on really trimming the leadership and really creating efficiencies at the leadership level. So that's been where the focus has been. But I do want to acknowledge for people that are listening to this that, any of these restructures are difficult. You unfortunately lose good people. We've made a very conscious decision that this is about structure and position, not about people, not about individuals, not about performance. And so sometimes that means that you're going to lose good people. We've tried to minimize that, but it is impactful. Any organization that goes through a significant restructure, it's a challenging exercise, and you have to acknowledge that there is pain within the organization. And what's important is how you give people respect through the process. And I've spent a lot of time on that.
This is not the first time I gather that you've been through a process like this. What have you learned along the way that perhaps has changed the way you're approaching this huge task now?
Yeah, I think I did a much smaller restructure at Nillumbik. And I think I took a lot of lessons from that in how you deal with people. And I think having a very open, clear, transparent process and allowing people to experience the emotions that they're going to experience and not judging people for how they're dealing with it is really important. I think at the end of the day, giving people respect and dignity throughout the process, and looking at people in the eye and not outsourcing the task of redundancies is incredibly important. So that's been a real focus. I've had plenty of people say, Mark, we're not necessarily happy with where this is headed in terms of the outcomes, but we think this has been a really open, transparent process, and that we're grateful for the fact that you have been open and transparent and given us as much information as you can possibly give. And I think if you can do a restructure in that way, where you do everything you can to protect the dignity of the individual and respect for the individual, then you can hopefully minimize the trauma that these things cause.
What's the bottom line aim here in terms of dollars that you're looking to achieve through the restructure?
We were given a very specific task by our council, which kind of made us get into this a little bit sooner than we were ready for. But we were told we needed to cut $5 million in employee expenses and another $5 million through service reviews. So what that actually means is that we've actually slowed the increase in our employee expenses, but it does still mean that we will have, and this is public information, we will have anywhere between 27 and 48 redundancies. The difference between the 48 and the 27 being positions that we think we can redeploy, but there will be a minimum of 27 redundancies. That's not massive, but again, when it's at the leadership level and there are significant changes in terms of the structure and where teams fit, it is disruptive. And how we manage that and how we, again, provide that respect to individuals becomes really important.
Yeah. So those figures of 5 million employee costs, 5 million in other savings, what's your understanding of how that number was arrived at? Is it simply the case of what the council can afford with its budget?
Yeah, I think those numbers were arrived at, that those would be what we would need to, I hate this term, but sort of right size the organization,
Yeah.
and deliver that longer term financial sustainability. If I'm honest, it was probably because that number was set pretty much at the very start of my time. I think that number was really an attempt to pare back the very rapid increases in costs. So it was sort of paring the number back to really a flat growth rate, as opposed to it actually doesn't represent serious cuts to the number. It actually is flatlining the number. And actually, if we had not done that, then our costs would have gone up by that amount from the previous year. So it was
Gotcha.
really just an attempt to cap where we were headed, if that makes sense.
It does. And what does that do in terms of the community priorities that you started to mention before and the ability to deliver on those?
Yeah, I think what the council would want from those savings is basically more funds available for capital works. And this is the bane for all councils. How do you get enough funding for all the capital works, and really importantly, the maintenance of your existing assets? And that's a challenge here, and it's a challenge at every council I've ever been at. So I would expect to see those savings then channeled into funding for capital works.
Okay, and I've seen some announcements recently. Change to the way you're delivering youth services is one that's just come out this week.
Yeah.
Is that an example of the sort of community priorities that you were talking about before?
Yeah, the youth services one is an interesting one, because that review started well before I started, and it was part of our service review program. What we're seeking to do there is, whilst there will be some savings to council, we actually think that the real message here is that a better service for our youth can be delivered by partnering with external organizations. So there tends to be this focus on, oh, what are we going to save? But the reality in this is we actually think that we will deliver a better outcome for the youth in the community by using a partnership model.
Mm.
But because we've had such a focus on cost, unfortunately, that tends to get lost in that message. This is really about ultimately a better service for the youth.
Yeah. A couple more things to ask you before I let you go, Mark. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the other podcast I do, which is Local Government News Roundup. One
Yeah,
of the most listened to episodes to this day is the one that announced Mornington Peninsula Shire's move to open briefing sessions last
yeah,
year. A lot of
yeah,
interest about that issue in the sector. Flash forward, I think, more than 12 months now. Where is that? I know it happened before your
yeah.
arrival, but where is that at?
So we landed at a compromise position there, where we're providing a lot more information about what was discussed at briefings. But we had a really good discussion about that, because the concern we have is that if we have all council meetings as open, or not meetings, but we have these briefings as
Mm,
completely open, what would happen is it would put officers in a difficult position, and we wouldn't necessarily be able to have some of those frank, open discussions that we have. The councilors wanted more transparency about what's discussed at briefings. So what we've done is we've provided much better notes and information about what was discussed, but we haven't invited the public into those briefings so that we can at least still have those open dialogues. So
mm,
we arrived at a really good compromise position there, I think.
yeah. I don't know if you're aware, New South Wales is moving to ban private briefing sessions with their new meeting code, which is coming in next
Yeah.
year. Again, an issue that's not going away, I think.
Yeah, I think it's risky, because I think if everything is open, then the reality is the way you present information will change, and you can't always necessarily have those open, free conversations that are so important to understand what is council's position. And so
Mm,
I think there's some risks in that, but I think that we've arrived at a really good compromise.
yeah. Before I let you go, the Board of Inquiry into the McCrae landslips being ongoing for some months. It must be getting close to an end now, is it?
It is. The Board of Inquiry officially wraps up on the 10th of September, which is Wednesday. We're preparing for their report to be released either that day or the day after. We don't know for certain when it will be released. We're not provided with that information, but we are anticipating that. And it's impossible to say what that report is going to recommend at this stage. I can't second guess that. I do think there will be some takeaways for the whole sector, and I'm happy to give my 2 cents on that if you want. But I do think the whole sector should watch this because I do think there will be some important takeaways from this.
And is that based on your observation of the information that was shared and the discussions that happened during the inquiry?
Yes. Yeah.
So, give us your 2 cents. What do you think other CEOs perhaps should be looking for?
I think one of the things that will be that will come out of this will be the role of erosion management overlays. So I think, and some councils have already started releasing that kind of information. I would need a whole podcast to go through that in detail. And I probably wouldn't want to do that before the Board of Inquiry releases its findings, but I think there will be a lot in that. And I think the other thing that I hope to see is some clarity on the role of the municipal building surveyor, because that's been a challenge in this as well. So I think there might be some lessons in that space.
All right, we'll look out for that either on the 10th, next Wednesday, or soon thereafter for that Board of Inquiry report. Mark, it's been great to chat. Thanks for being so open with us about what you're dealing with there and your priorities, and we wish you all the best with the work that you're doing.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris.
Mark Stoermer, CEO of Mornington Peninsula Shire Council, my guest today on VLGA Connect. Well, from one coastal location, a beautiful part of Victoria, to another beautiful part of Victoria, down into the southwest. And I've got the Mayor of Moyne Shire joining me, Councillor Karen Foster. Lovely to see you, Karen.
Good morning, and thank you, Chris. Lovely to see you also.
Couple of things happening down in your neck of the woods that we wanted to touch base with you on. The one that sort of jumped out recently was this new deal you've done with the Great Ocean Road Tourism Committee. Such an important element of the tourism offering in your part of the world, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, tourism is a huge part of our economy, secondary only to agriculture. But we estimate that tourism injects around 112 million every year into our local economy. So it's significant.
And growing? And growing?
It is. It's interesting. COVID obviously had a big impact on tourism everywhere, but we're seeing the returns. It's absolutely returned to pre-COVID levels. And we last year, 370,000 visitors to Moyne Shire alone in our little patch in southwest Victoria.
What does this new 3-year MOU commit you to? What do you see coming out of that arrangement?
Yeah, so it's a 3-year arrangement with the Great Ocean Road Regional Tourism Group. And essentially it means that we can pool our resources and work together with our neighbouring councils along the Great Ocean Road and up towards us. So it means we can do far more than we would if we were going it alone. Obviously, we can do a lot of combined marketing, combined advocacy. So it's a really important partnership for us and makes a lot of sense for us where we're located.
Yeah. Where does the state tourism offering fit with this? Because I imagine there's a responsibility there as well, isn't there?
Well, there is. The Great Ocean Road itself is an incredibly recognised brand, both nationally and internationally. So this particular tourism board is very relevant for us. And they really do a lot of marketing internationally and also into Melbourne as well. So there is definitely an alliance with the state marketing efforts, but this is specifically to do with attracting visitors to our part of the world.
Yeah, I see. I think it's an $80,000 annual contribution from your council, and other councils contribute as well. Do you see that as a cost shift, though?
It's a great question. We don't. Before we were part of this alliance, we were effectively having to look after our own marketing, and $80,000, as you can imagine, would not go very far if we were attempting to market Moyne Shire to the state and internationally. So we see this as a really important way to get a focus on us specifically. The state marketing is really important as well, getting international visitors into Victoria, but our message is very clear around the Great Ocean Road.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good points you make. Moving on to another issue, you've recently removed the prayer from your council agenda, but that's not been without some controversy, has it?
No, as you can expect, it's a very personal issue for so many people. So our council did decide in July, that we would remove the Christian prayer from the agenda and replace it with a non-denominational statement of values. So that did occur. There was a rescission motion the following month in August, which was unsuccessful. So right now we're working on developing what that replacement statement is. So we'll be bringing that to future council meetings.
So clearly it's been a bit divisive around the council table. What is the community telling you about this move?
Yeah, it has been a little divisive, as we would expect.
Mm.
So our community is like communities right across Australia. Religion is, according to census data, is declining in terms of people's declarations
Yeah.
around that. So the move was really about it being inclusive and ensuring that nobody is left out. You know, when we sit around the council table and we recite a Christian prayer, we may not mean to exclude, but that's the sense that that's the feedback we're getting from members in our community, that
Yeah.
it's in 2025 we need to really move forward and consider the fact that we've got a lot more diverse communities now than we had before.
Diversity and inclusion, it's coming up a lot just of late with this increase in anti-Semitism, the race-based attacks that are happening. Two mayors, at least this week, have come out with very strong statements. I'm not sure if you've seen those, the mayor of Yarra and the mayor of Bringbank. Knowing you a little bit as I do, I imagine you stand pretty firm with the sentiments they've been expressing.
Well, yes, but it's interesting, isn't it, Chris? Because what's the role of local government in all of this? From my perspective, I'm really just focused on making sure everybody in our community feels welcomed and feels at home and doesn't feel like they are other or outside. So that's my focus, and I really try not to get too embroiled in the politics of things, and just keep in touch with our community sentiment. And I think our community expects that of us. They just want us to get on with the business of being a council, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, very, very tactful. I won't try and drag you into the political turmoil anymore. Perhaps one other thing before I let you go. You've recently agreed to put, I think, 5 motions forward to the MAV State Council on a range of topics. One of those is renewable energy. Again, a few councils expressing concerns after the transmission plan was released by the government a couple of weeks ago, with some surprises in there. You've already got a pretty major renewable energy zone in place in Moyne, haven't you?
We do. We like to think we are the renewable capital of Australia. We may not be, but we're claiming it. We have got around 400 turbines operating in Moyne Shire, and about the same again in planning. So we advocated really strongly to the state to think carefully and strategically about where the renewable energy zone should be. We've asked that it move further north and away from the highly productive dairy country in the south of our shire, and we're delighted that the state has heard us on that. So the renewable energy zone has moved a little north. We still feel our community is shouldering an unfair burden when it comes to renewables. We've got a bit of a spaghetti of transmission lines running across our shire, as well as some very large turbines. And it's again, a very divisive issue in our community. When most people aren't opposed to renewables per se, but they do feel the cumulative impact of all of this work, all of the wind farms we have, is really a bit unfair.
And I gather from your motion, the benefits that flow from these are not being equitably shared with the communities that are in effect generating those outputs.
Yeah, every wind farm company does it differently. Some of them pay lip service, in my view, and some of them take it a bit more seriously. We're advocating to the state and federal governments to have some consistency around that, so that communities can at least have some assurance that there will be benefits that flow onto them. Because at the moment, the net benefit is in the negative. If it's, footy jumpers and netball skirts aren't going to cut it. We're asking, why can't communities affected or who are hosting wind farms, why can't they access free power? It's a model that works elsewhere. Why can't it work here?
Yeah. Your other motions around volunteerism, infrastructure, both early years and more generally community and roads. What sort of support are you expecting to get from your colleagues for these motions, and how important is that?
It's really important. I think that's the whole point of having an MAV State Council, is that we come together and we share issues that impact all of us. And I think the issues we've put forward are relevant to councils right across Victoria. They're not unique to us. They're not problems we alone are shouldering. So I think that's the power of coming together and saying, hey, this is impacting us as well. Let's come together. Let's try and work on some collective solutions with the government.
Mayor Karen Foster, Moyne Shire Council, always lovely to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Always a delight to catch up with Karen Foster at Moyne, and my thanks also to Mark Stoermer for joining me on today's edition of VLGA Connect. That's almost it for today. I just want to remind you about the VLGA's Mayoral Leadership Program, which is coming up in November. If you are thinking of securing a place for your council, you need to move quickly. Places are filling fast for the program, which is in its second year. It's designed to equip mayors and deputy mayors with the knowledge they need to lead their council effectively, and in accordance with the mandatory requirements that the Victorian government has put in place. The training must be completed by the 31st of December. That's for all mayors and deputy mayors at the start of their mayoral term. The VLGA's Mayoral Leadership Program is on Friday the 28th of November from 9:30am to 4:30pm at the Monash Conference Centre in Collins Street, Melbourne. You can find out more by heading to the VLGA website or give a member of the VLGA team a call to discuss it further. That's our show for this week. Thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or your podcast player to make sure you don't miss future episodes of VLGA Connect. Until next week, thanks for watching. Bye for now.